Welcome to Food Revolution Conversations, where we explore healthy, ethical, and sustainable food for all. Welcome to this Food Revolution conversation. I'm Ocean Robbins, your host, and we are going to look today at the global impact of food and lifestyle choices. You know, every dollar we spend, every bite we take is essentially a vote. We're voting for the health we want, and we're voting for the world we want. And those votes have profound implications. We are also impacted by the votes that other people cast, by the choices other people make. And so we're going to look at that. We're going to look at how, at a certain level, humanity is all interconnected and our food systems are all interconnected, and how we can participate meaningfully in helping to shift those systems so that they affirm life, affirm health, affirm the dignity of future generations, and help to build a more prosperous, thriving, vibrant future for life on Earth. And we are here with an extraordinary human being, Peggy Liu, chairperson of JUICE, that's Joint U.S.-China Collaboration on Clean Energy. She has been at the heart of the greening of China since 2007. Over the years, she has realized that in order to green China, in order to green the U.S., in order to green the world, we have to look at lifestyle and food as well. So she's also the founder of Food Heroes, which helps to engage children in healthy eating and promote healthy food choices amongst the next generation. She's dedicated her life to personal and planetary health. She's been named the Green Goddess of China by the Chinese press. Peggy travels around the world consulting with companies and governments on how we can catalyze societal scale change, how we can scale sustainable innovation, and how we can work together to build a healthy future for life on Earth. Peggy keynotes around the world about lessons learned from China on tackling pollution, urbanization, epidemics, drought, obesity, and diabetes. She's a World Economic Forum Young Global Leader. She was awarded the Nobel of Climate Change and the Hillary Step. The Economist has called her one of the most innovative thinkers in Asia. She is a distinguished professor at China Academy of Governance, a lecturer at China Executive Leadership Academy of Pudong, and the National Academy for Mayors of China. I could go on and on and on, but rather than do that, let's introduce Peggy Liu.
Thank you so much, Ocean, for having me. Are you tired from reading that?
It's quite an extraordinary life you've lived so far, and I know you're just getting started.
It's been fun. You have to keep eating healthy so you have a long life.
Right? You do, don't you? It's amazing what you can do when you nourish your body with the right fuel, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah. So Peggy, we're in right now. We're speaking from 10,000 miles apart, opposite sides of the world, really, and very different cultural contexts. But I think we've both stumbled upon some common realities that human beings eat, and what we eat is having this huge impact. How does it look from your standpoint? What are the trends you are seeing around food? What are the impacts of those trends, and what are you trying to do?
Well, Chinese people love eating food. We are known for love eating food, but unfortunately that means a lot of food. And we have these huge banquets around these lazy Susans. And if you ever had a VIP meal before, you know that they just keep shoveling you with dishes upon dishes upon dishes. And it's not actually polite. It's not considered polite for somebody to leave with all the dishes empty, right? So unfortunately that means a lot of food waste. And food waste, according to Project Drawdown, is the number 3 biggest intervention against climate change. Luckily, China definitely understands this, and we've launched the second version of our Empty Plate campaign recently. The government top down is encouraging people to stop wasting food on their plate, and just generally speaking, right? If you have 1.34 billion people to feed, that's a lot of mouths, that's a lot of food waste.
Yeah.
So I think the trend is just to be very conscientious about what is on your plate and be very grateful for it, and make sure that you're intentional about the way that you eat it.
All right, well, we'll talk about more, but I actually want to go a little deeper with that one. If there was some kind of an Olympics of food waste, I think the United States would win gold pretty handily. We waste half of the food that we produce in this country, literally half of it. And then that's not even counting the calories we waste by cycling them through livestock. It takes 12 pounds of grain or soy to produce 1 pound of feedlot beef in the United States today. 3 or 4 pounds per pound of chicken or pork. It's like a protein factory in reverse. And because we're not just getting flesh for those calories, we're producing hoof and hide and bones and manure and urine and, of course, energy the animals use to move around. And all of this has a significant environmental impact. So when you combine those two things, wasting half our calories and then cycling most of our grain and soy through livestock, which wastes another big chunk, the good news, I guess, we could feel guilty and ashamed, or we could say, oh, wow, there's a tremendous opportunity here, isn't there?
We put food in our mouth, but we don't really even think about it. Is it alive or dead? Right?
Yeah.
Does it have positive energy or dead, weighing down energy? Is it full of pollutants, or is it, beautiful, fresh, pick it off of the bush? So we don't really think about that. And that's really struck me as the fundamental problem of food, is that we don't realize that this is a really intimate act. And in fact, we have banquets in China or in Italy, right, around I think a vineyard is what I'm imagining, right, and fresh food along a picnic table. What you're doing is you're sharing food and sharing love, right?
Yes.
And actually, when you cook, you're making food and you're making love. Now, if you think along those lines, I think it would really, really make a difference to the entire supply chain, but also our own health. And I'm not just talking about physical health. I'm talking about spiritual, energetic health. I'm talking about really, really living long lives, cellular health, right? Imagine if you looked at every single piece of processed food like mummies wrapped in coffins. Would you really want to eat a mummy wrapped in a coffin?
I don't think I'm going to be able to forget that metaphor. So the coffin is actually the plastic, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, think about it, right? But if you're picking off a rainbow of food from trees and from the ground, right? That is living soil, that's living, breathing cells that you're putting into your body, which then nourishes you. And then you in turn compost the food waste, and that nourishes the soil, which then nourishes you all over again. So that's really what we need to get into to change the entire food system, to have a food revolution. Right?
Well, you're a busy person, to say the least. I know you work very, very long hours. And so do you have any kind of ritual or process for remembering your relationship with food so it doesn't just kind of get shoved down the hatch, so it isn't just lost in the busyness and the stress of everything else? How do you bring the sacred into your relationship with food, even in the middle of a busy day?
Well, I think that whenever you have food in front of you, you need to remember that this is a living being, really. In whatever format it is, it can speak to you. It's giving you its nourishment, its love. And so you need to be grateful and receive that love in an intentional way.
Yeah.
Right? And so rather than just sort of shoving down food, I mean, really take a moment to smell it, to enjoy the visuals of it, and to taste it fully before it goes down. Now, of course, the side benefit is you eat less because it takes a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And then you realize, I mean, for me, my spirituality is very East Asian, right? And I view everything as one. Everything is one energy field. The problem with China right now, I have to tell you, I was born and raised in the US a long time ago. I'm not going to say when, but I moved here in 2004, and I've been seeing a sharp decline over the last generation. Where now 1 in 5 people live in China, population-wise, around the earth, but 1 in 3 are diabetic. 1 in 3.
1 in 3 of the world's diabetics live in China.
Yes. Oh, sorry. Right. You said it the right way.
Mm-hmm.
And so why is that? So 1 in 2 people in China are diabetic or pre-diabetic.
Wow.
That's pretty bad.
And it wasn't like that a generation ago.
I mean, honestly, a generation or two ago, they didn't even have food to eat. So that's an anomaly, I think. But, you know, the way that Chinese people eat is very, very different. So first of all, there's a lot of fresh vegetables. You stir fry with garlic or, you know, some sauce or whatever, and it tastes beautiful and fresh and a little bit crispy. It's not mushy. It's not just steamed. I mean, it's very, very flavorful. It's very colorful. And then our food has little tiny condiments of meat. So like, you know, what do you call it? Ground up meat, or usually pork. Right? It's really for flavor versus a whole steak, right? So now, a generation and a half later, where KFC is #1 franchise, right? With McDonald's not that far behind. Starbucks introduced, and other coffee stores really introduced milk into the diet, where there was no milk when I was growing up. I mean, milk was really unusual and actually foul tasting, just tasted totally different. And, you know, a third of us are, I think most of us are lactose intolerant. So milk is a little strange thing to put into our drinks anyway. But, you know, now there's sugar, refined sugar and milk in coffee, which of course we didn't drink coffee either a generation and a half ago. It was all tea. And now there's steaks, right? Trying to emulate the TV shows or the advertisements of steakhouses in the US, right? Because now we're entering the middle class. So what does middle class do? Well, they eat steaks. Well, that's not really how Chinese people eat. We eat slivers of meat or little ground up pieces of meat, again, mainly for flavor. And, you know, the cakes, we didn't really have cakes growing up. But growing up, I only had fruit, cut up fruit as dessert. But now you have all this very fluffy dessert bakeries. So this type of food is, #1, a lot of refined sugars, and all of that turns into fat. There's a lot of bad stuff happening in China, and hopefully we'll be able to reverse it with food heroes, teaching people to eat a rainbow every day, to drink lots of water, to grow your own food. This is something that I've realized this generation has no idea how to do, to grow herbs, to grow their own tomatoes, to grow their own peppers, right? Fruits that you can pick off the tree. I mean, this generation really has sort of been left out of that joy.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk more about solutions. First, I want to understand the impact of what's happening, though. So with 1/5 of the world's population gravitating in this direction, there are profound implications to that for all of us on planet Earth. And one of those relates to food supply. China used to produce more than enough food for its own population. But that's not true anymore, is it?
No. I mean, China is the largest importer of everything. I mean, you name it. It's probably the only country, I know it's the only country with a pork reserve, right? The US has an oil reserve. We have a pork reserve. And unfortunately, that causes countries that want to do trade with China to deforest, right? And just like do industrial scale farming so that they can bring these food commodities to China. So I think the interesting thing is that China is doing very innovative things. So for example, salty water varieties of rice. So rice that grows in salty water, just a year and a half ago, they got it to a point where that they're really growing it at scale. And they've given this technology to other countries like Dubai, right? And parts of Africa. So they're experimenting at large scale. So rice, unfortunately, is one of the largest sources of methane because as it sort of sits there and rots in the water, the standing water, it causes problems. But salty water rice is really interesting because it doesn't require a lot of the irrigation, right? In some places, 70 to 80% of drinking water is used by agriculture. I don't know if people realize that. And we're running out of water and we just keep hosing our food. So we need smarter ways of using water to grow our own food.
There was a study published in the journal Science a couple years ago. They created a data set after they reviewed 40,000 farms in 119 countries. They were analyzing 40 different food products that represent 90% of all calories consumed on planet Earth. And they looked at the impact of these foods from farm to fork on land use and climate change emissions and freshwater use and water pollution and all sorts of other factors. They wound up concluding that meat and dairy provide 18% of the world's calories for humans, 37% of the protein. They use 83% of all farmland on Earth, and 60%, they produce 60% of agriculture's greenhouse gas emissions. They ended up concluding that if just theoretically the entire world went vegan tomorrow, which of course is not going to happen, but let's just play this out for a second, we would free up an area of land equal to all of the United States, China, the European Union, and Australia combined. That's how much land would be instantly saved, which could be used for carbon farming. It could be used to go back to forest. It could be used for wildlife habitat. It could be used for future cities. It could be used to grow more food for future populations of humans. It could be used to grow more organic food because we could take the stress off of trying to produce maximal yield per acre under highly stressed conditions, so we could be more sustainable, so that future generations would have topsoil, would have water, would have a healthier world to live in. And so I kind of want to ground our conversation a little bit, so to speak, in this larger picture, and to acknowledge that every step we take to shift that, to help shift the impact of animal agriculture specifically on our planet, is really making it a little bit easier on our planet, isn't it?
Well, a lot easier, I would say, not just a little bit easier. So I mentioned Project Drawdown, which I'm on the board of earlier, and I said that number 3 intervention to reduce climate change is food waste. Guess what number 4 is? Plant-rich diet.
Yeah.
Right? So number 3 and number 4 solutions to reduce or completely reverse climate change is in your hands.
Yes. So as we seek to create change, one of the obstacles we run up against in our country is entrenched interests that are profiting from the status quo. And we have government policies that further that. In the United States, we have a farm bill where taxpayer money goes to subsidize and support farmers. No, I support farmers. They work really hard. They should have every possible support. We should back them, absolutely. However, the farmers we're backing are primarily the growers of so-called commodities crops. Yes. So in net effect, taxpayers are spending tens of billions of dollars every year in my country, bringing down the price of high fructose corn syrup, of white flour, and of factory farmed meat. Twinkies, which you mentioned earlier, has 14 subsidized ingredients. Meanwhile, we are creating a competitive disadvantage for broccoli, for healthy foods, that we know we should be eating more of. And is it similar there? Do you have price supports and sort of distortions in the marketplace, or how does that work?
I think in the US, what I've realized, because I'm now working heavily in commodities myself, what I've realized is that there are super entrenched financial interests that will be very, very, very difficult to break unless you work with somebody who understands commodities and to try and expose who is making money out of the commodities to the normal person. So right now it's a very ambiguous, amorphous, field where people are making a lot of money, egregious amounts of money on things that are unhealthy for the rest of us. So it's really not about food production. It's about money production. So one is we need transparency. We need to know who is making this money and where is that money going, and it needs to be broadcast, right? I think a lot of the farmers honestly are old ladies who might want to really transition to healthier farming and to encourage their grandchildren to take over the farms, but they don't have enough capital to transition for 5 years, right? From industrial agriculture to beautiful, diverse, rainbow, lush permaculture. And so if there was some way that all of that money that was being made in commodities could be diverted to the transition to community-supported agriculture, and just to show people how beautiful it is, what a painting that is compared to the sort of rows and rows and rows and rows of one single, crop, corn, 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 soybean, soybean, soybean. I mean, it's a completely different world, really. So I think transparency, better transparency of who is actually making money in commodities. You know, the other thing is I don't want to just complain about what's wrong. I want to give people a formula, and which is why we do Food Heroes. The formula for changing the world, changing the way that we eat, is just using our imagination and showing people how beautiful a life you can live if you were to fully embrace beautiful rainbow foods, whole foods, right? Living foods. So I think that Food Heroes really started with learning from the cartoon characters, right? Of using the hero's journey of little tiny food heroes, right? That look like diverse kids, mixed race kids around the world, and learning from their own issues, right? Maybe their parents or relative have diabetes and it affects their entire family. Right? Maybe they've moved to a different country and they're totally in shock with the different types of food in their new hometown and they don't know quite how to cook it, right? Maybe they're lonely and they learned how to make their own pizzas and all of a sudden they're really popular, right? So use the stories and the struggles of the food heroes, the heroes' journeys, to build this avatar world, so to speak, just like James Cameron did, right? Where it's so beautiful and so lush and so delicious that you just want to jump in there and you never want to leave that food world, right? So my challenge to the Food Revolution viewers is to really gather a lot of images and really think about, okay, if everybody lived the way that you want them to and had the relationship, the beautiful, intimate relationship with food that we all want to, if we had all the beautiful food that, you know, in affordable in a way that we could just go and grab it in our corner store, well, how does that change your relationship with your friends and your family?
There's so much I want to respond to in what you're saying. But central right now is that we need a vision of where we're going.
Yes.
And in a toxic food culture, you know, pain pushes sometimes and vision pulls sometimes. In a toxic food culture, a lot of us are mobilized by not wanting to get sick, by fear for our future, by fear for our climate, by not wanting things to continue the way they're going. But at the same time, that's not enough. We have to say yes to something. And the beautiful thing about food is that you don't just get to say no to junk, you get to say yes to health. You get to say yes to the life you want. And there's a positive feedback loop that sets in. When you bring your food choices into alignment with your values, with your integrity, with your dreams for your life, then suddenly there's a congruency, there's a potency, there's a presence that sets in your body. And you become more feeling a sense of place. Most people I know feel a profound sense of disconnection, like we've lost some sense of belonging. There's loneliness, there's isolation. It's so epidemic in the modern world. I don't think it's just here. I think it's probably all around the world.
Everywhere.
And food is one place where we can start to weave ourselves back into the web of life. We can start to feel ourselves as participants in an ecosystem. And that gives a sense of grounding, literally, a sense of place, a sense of belonging to our world. And so that relationship sort of changes everything, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. So I'll tell you a little secret. One of the things that I've been really interested in and exploring, and I've been sharing with people a lot, is something called quantum manifestation. What that means is we can all change reality. We can choose the world that we want to live in. We actually have the power. And I know because I've seen it happen now 5 times in China, where what you do is you imagine the world that you want and you express it with so much joy that people are magnetized to that joy, right? That energy and motion. I mean, this is a bad example, but it's like the kids who wanted the golden ticket to the Willy Wonka chocolate factory. Well, what is your version of Willy Wonka's chocolate factory? If it was living, beautiful, permaculture, vibrant, rainbow foods, what would that look like? If you had, instead of the Oompa Loompas, you had the food heroes.
Right. When I have twins, and when they watched Willy Wonka's chocolate factory when they were little, we made up an imaginary world in which everything was healthy. And it was a
There
Willy
you
Wonka chocolate
go.
factory kind of a world. And we were like jumping into the kale juice. And it was
There you
like,
go. There you
it was,
go. There you
everything was
go.
delicious and edible and nourishing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So imagine if you did that around the schools. You start, neighborhoods, and you made it a game. We Food Heroes, we created, over 30 classes and over 6 games and over 6 card decks of beautiful, beautiful food. And we taught this in different cities and different schools for very young children before their dietary habits have been set, when their imagination can still run wild.
A beautiful vision. Now, and you are, among other things, a preeminent marketer. Obviously, you're using your skills in marketing to try to market health and vision and possibility and peace and cooperation on planet Earth. Yeah. And I thank you for that. What you're sharing, the sense of enjoyment and peace and ease and deliciousness. There's a kind of a deliciousness to bringing all of our sensations into our relationship with our food lives. It feels quite compelling, actually, because a lot of times the foods we choose to eat are not just because they fit with our self-identity. They're actually things that we are pulled to subconsciously. And that, I think, is one of the challenges for a lot of aspiring healthy eaters, is that we're actually addicted to unhealthy foods. And so, if for anybody who's ever found themselves on the wrong end of an empty bag of cookies or potato chips, who's ever felt themselves obsessing over unhealthy foods, preoccupied, kind of stuck in this unhealthy, addictive relationship to food, obsessed with foods that don't love us back. Do you have any advice for how to break that pattern?
Well, you actually named it. It's really, think back to your earliest childhood memory where you felt a sense of joy. You were so happy. There is one psychologist that I met, and his theory is that one moment you actually are trying to recreate your entire life. It shapes all of what you do to try and recreate that moment. Now, a lot of those moments are around food. So imagine if, like, when you're younger, you go to parties or you're watching TV, a football game, and it's fun because you're with your family and you're eating potato chips and hot dogs, etc. So you're going to gravitate to those same foods, right? So the trick, I think, for marketers is to try and emulate those comfort foods. What are those comfort foods? Like apple pie.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. What's something that you've heard other people gravitate towards, like nachos?
Ice cream's a big one for a lot of people.
Yes.
My grandpa founded Baskin Robbins, as I think you know, and so we know a bit about ice cream in our family, and the damage it can do. To be honest with you, I'm not involved in the company at all. Neither is my dad in any way, shape, or form. But we have some histories, maybe some karma still. I saw a comic recently. It was talking about how he wanted to be environmentally responsible, so he ate the whole carton because he didn't want to, use up freezer energy by putting it back in there.
That's hilarious. Well, so again, think about the ice cream. So I remember growing up in California and in the heat of the summer swimming, and then the ice cream truck would come by and it would play the sound, and we would all run to the front and try and buy those awful popsicles, right? With red, white, and blue, or like the ones that I liked were the chocolate ones that had sprinkles or cake on them or something. Now, if you were to be able to recreate those with yogurt or other types of more healthier versions, you get the same sentimental value. You feel loved. That's really what we all want. We want to feel loved. So I would say, let's reinvent those comfort foods, right? And reinvent those moments, right? All you need to do is use a little bit of advertising techniques to reshape people's memories, right? To substitute that particular comfort food with your now new healthy comfort food.
Yeah. And just a tip for anyone who's on the ice cream track here, we make the most amazing homemade frozen desserts. So we always have bananas in the freezer. And so we'll blend up in the Vitamix some bananas, a little bit of soy or nut milk of some kind, to make it creamy and help it blend more easily. And then some fruits and some vanilla, maybe some nutmeg. Fruits could be like berries. If you could go with sort of mangoes are really sweet. So like mango's amazing, but you can also do strawberry, and vanilla is really helpful, and maybe a little nutmeg just to add some depth to the flavor profile. And it's so good. You make it nice and thick. You can put it in cones, soft serve style. And we have those often. And you don't have to feel guilty about it, because bananas and, berries are good for you.
Well, it's interesting. In China, we have dragon fruit. We have red dragon fruit, right? So I can imagine a beautiful, like sorbet, like thing of red, beautiful, beautiful, bright, magenta-like dragon fruit. And it's a super food, actually, high content of vitamin C. So there's a lot of ways that we can explore, and kids love exploring. Let their imagination run wild when they're young, right?
Well, Peggy, I want to thank you so much. We live in a world where nations have been pitted against each other, and cultures and religions and people. There's so many divisions. And certainly I want to acknowledge that the United States and China are not on the best of terms right now in some respects, but we affect each other. In yes. profound ways. We affect each other's climate. We affect each other's water supplies. And as a human who wants my kids to have a world with a stable climate, who wants my kids to grow up in a world where there is enough food to eat for humanity, who wants to grow in a world with peace and prosperity and wellness on Earth, I realize the stake I have in the work you're doing. I realize the impact that you are having on my children's future. And I recognize that at an ultimate level, we all are bound. I think Dr. King said it well. He said that we're bound in an inescapable web of mutuality, that what one does affects all. And so I thank you for sharing your wisdom, your brilliance, your creativity, your leadership. And I want you to know that I and all of us over here in this continent are benefiting from it, not just from your tangible actions and their impact on our planet, but also from your wisdom and what we can glean from it that can help us do our work better here.
Wow, thank you so much, Ocean. Thank you so much. I'm really grateful for your comments. China has 1.34 billion people, probably more now. So it isn't just another part of the world. It is a large part of the world, right? And China isn't a government. It's people. It's its food. It's its culture. It's its energy, right? It's its ancient wisdom.
Yeah.
And all of that is something that I really hope to share with people in America, people in Europe, people in Africa, people in Latin America, everywhere, because what the ancient Eastern Chinese wisdom, what Asian wisdom really says is that there is no you and me. There's no left and right. There's no here and there. It's really just transformation, like composting. Food goes in compost, into soil, back into brain, back into sun, back into trees, and back into us, back into our cells. So every part of nature can be reborn. That's what food is teaching us. Every part of nature can be reborn. And it's also teaching us that we need to share food and share love. Sharing food is sharing love. So with that, thank you so much for having me, Ocean. I hope to host you here in China soon.
I hope so. And I hope to host you here on our little permaculture farm here in California someday too.
I would love that.
Sharing food, sharing love, and sharing wisdom. It's been a privilege to share this time with you. I thank you so much. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you. Thank you, Ocean.